Buffy Bronick, Executive Director of Southeastern Minnesota Multi-County HRA or SEMMCHRA. Wow. To follow two big requests. Like schools, we don't have the authority just to levy on our own and make those decisions. We have to come forward and ask the counties. I have two presentations today. I was going to say, boy, this was teed up just perfectly, but maybe I would have liked to have been first on the agenda. The first part of my presentation is more informative, and it comes out of the budget committee meeting that I presented at in June. The second item is related to this first item, and I'll explain why and how. And that is actually a request, an action item for you. So as you're aware, SEMMCHRA does levy every year. In your packet, and the slides that are up, there's a whole lot of slides here that basically is the packet of information that I gave to the budget committee. It's our full levy request in there. So typically I'm not here in July presenting HRA levy information, but our levy request this year is a little bit different. We have two options within there, option A and option B, and I'm here to focus mainly on option B. I'll highlight option A, which is our basic levy that we levy every year. And I'll go into more details in September timeframe when I'm back on that, requesting that preliminary levy be set. I do want to point that out too. Preliminary levy set, once that's set, you cannot go any higher than that. So we don't have all the information on the table today. So remember that as we are in September and we have to set that preliminary levy, we can always go lower. So option B, well, actually I'll talk about option A first. Very, very top level, same components of the levy that we've always asked for historically here at the county. It's about a 1% increase, $4,600. The only one that's increasing is our general fund. And we're committed to keeping our overall levy less than 3%. I'm going to say our traditional levy less than 3% increase into 2025. Now option B. And again, that's the reason I'm here today, is to talk about that, to give us time to think about and explore this other option. It's option A, the traditional levy, plus two components that are key to addressing the $1 billion in housing fund. We do know that there's $1 billion the state has appropriated to housing. 16 programs, some new, some old. Some of the existing programs that they're funding have already been funded, and they've amped up some of that. Some of the programs that they're going to fund will be available in 2023. I'll talk a little bit about what SEMMCHRA is already going to do with some of those programs. But I'm really interested in these new programs, and that's what this option B is meant to talk about and address. Two things: capacity and leverage. Pause right there and just say, we have, because the question came up, what are you doing with the other counties? We have an option A and an option B at all four counties. We're multi-county HRA. We levy in all four counties. That's key to this too, because I need to explain, did you come up with $40,000, Buffy, and $500,000? Goodhue County is our only county that has a housing trust fund. The other counties don't. One of the key things when you're presenting is know your audience. At least you know, you've been educated, you have this, it's set up. It's not set up in the other three counties. So I'm not going in with a $500,000 request to fund the housing trust fund, because I think they'd say, no, they haven't seen the value there. So that is the difference. I am going in and asking for $40,000 for housing development to write grants to bring part of that $1 billion home. Being multi-county, I don't know what the other three counties are going to, what my four counties are going to say. I feel, and I told the budget committee this, it would be amiss if I didn't give this opportunity to you to say, hey, there's $1 billion, it's going to be spent. And do we want to try to bring some of that money back here? You have to apply for it. You have to have leverage. You have to have that capacity to be able to do that. SEMMCHRA we will go after part of that $1 billion. with the existing resources that we have, and I'll talk a little bit about what those are. The state of Minnesota is they're restructuring. They're going to hire 56 staff people to create these programs. I actually have a list of all the programs that I'll leave with Andrea, and she can give that to you with some information. The $40,000 specifically allows us to do one of two things. We can, let's say Goodhue County is the only county that does that. I can't hire a grant writer for $40,000, but I can contract out for $40,000 to write grants. If all the counties say yes, that's more money than what I need to hire. There's options there. We could roll that money forward because I do, in all transparency, think this will be at least a 2-year request for staffing. I think we'll have the opportunity to go after funding in 2024 and 2025. After that, I don't know. So I think that could be a 2-year request. So if we ended up with more money in the front end, we could use that to help support that grant writing position the second year. The leverage component, why do we ask for leverage? We currently do have, and this is a little bit of information about our current housing trust fund. We have around $450,000 sitting in there. The Goodhue County Housing Trust Fund Subcommittee met this year. We had every intention of spending that money out in March. We were going to get rid of that. Then the state came through with this money, and we said, well, pause. We may want to use that money to leverage more money. That's the idea of the housing trust fund. You want to use that to leverage. So we paused. We kept our down payment assistance program going. We've used all the funds appropriated to our down payment assistance, but we've held what we've called either our flex or our multi-project, which is the creation of housing. Could be single family, could be multi-family housing. And we've held that. So this would be an ask in addition to. This money could be used to help finance gap financing. The other thing about a housing trust fund is this isn't just this is the county's money. This isn't just SEMMCHRA using it to write grants. There are other, I'm going to call them housers within the county. You have Three Rivers, you have CETA that can go after and write grants to leverage these funds. So the request in option B is $40,000 for capacity and $500,000 for leverage funds. If we don't use that, or we don't think we'd use it, it would stay within the housing trust fund. I can't use that to pay staff salaries. I can't use it for just create a program outside of what's within the guidelines or the ordinance of the housing trust fund. It's a restricted fund, basically. So the money sits there currently in your, I'm calling it option A, traditional levy. We have funded $100,000 going into that housing trust fund per year. Let's say we didn't use it. You could take that out of the levy and say, well, you've got the money in there, spend that money down. There's options out there for you in the future. Why 500,000? Talked a little bit about that, knowing your audience. Go big. We currently levy about 14% of our levy capacity. We're amongst the lowest in the state as an HRA. Right, and the flip side, Red Wing HRA, they levy 100% of their levy capacity. So this would take Goodhue County up. Your total levy capacity is estimated at about 1.2 million. This would be about $970,000 of that total levy capacity. Questions? A lot of information. Any questions from the board?
No, I'll just say thank you for coming. And I think that there are so many good ideas out there that they're going to exceed our ability to cover all of them. And as a board, we'll have to decide where we want to spend our resources and what the cap is on the resources we have to spend.
Just one comment kind of in follow up to that. So what does this mean to a taxpayer? If I have a $300,000 valued home, I started at SEMMCHRA. I used 100,000. But with 300,000, our traditional levy costs about $19.75. If we use the max levy on the tax statement, you can literally see the HRA levy. You would see about $45. That would be the cost, about $45
per month, per year.
Per year.
So your tax statement, my tax statement already has SEMMCHRA on there.
So based on,
And it's only,
SEMMCHRA can't do that. We have to set.
correct,
correct.
and it's everything except the city of Red Wing.
Right.
Everything except the city of Red Wing.
The city of Red Wing has its own HRA, which levies, as she said, 100%.
Of their capacity.
And we levy 14%.
Yes. That's across. I don't want to say 14% for Good Hugh County, but of our total levy capacity as an HRA, multi-county HRA, we utilize about 14%.
And are we the only one that put the 100,000 in the housing trust fund?
You are the only county that I represent that has a housing trust fund.
I see. And you aren't asking any of the other counties to?
I have asked, I presented that opportunity to them. They have chosen not to do that. And I say that tongue in cheek. Good, Dodge County has created a housing trust fund through Min Prairie, which is another the HRA isn't managing that one. It's a different function. But they do somewhat have that housing trust fund function. We may move that into SEMMCHRA, may at some point look at that.
When we look at what we're spending in SEM, is that keeping this all Goodhue County citizens? Is this trying to bring in more population? Is this bringing in housing for, do you have like numbers? I mean, how much is this tax that we're taxing our Goodhue County citizens staying for the Goodhue County citizens? Is there and I've heard, some of it's Section 8, some of it's, individual housing. I mean, what?
That's a full gamut. This could address the whole continuum. And I think that was the point of the legislature this last session was the $1 billion is meant to touch the entire housing continuum, from rental assistance to homelessness, to rental assistance, to single family homes, to rehabilitation, to new construction. So all those different things are in there, and opportunities, some of which we do, some of which we don't do. Things that we would look at, I can give you one example that we've talked about. If there was a city that had a housing development that needed infrastructure, some of these funds are actually targeted for greater Minnesota. I think SEMMCHRA is positioned well when we're competing, especially just against our greater Minnesota colleagues. But there's a greater Minnesota infrastructure, a new program that's being established that would match money that we put in for infrastructure. So I don't know what that match will be. When I talk about housing trust fund, at one point was, dollar for dollar match. I would love it if it was $500,000 of infrastructure and they'd match it with 500,000. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the requests that are out there. So I could have asked for this next year, once I knew all the information.
But you might be behind, it might be gone.
Late. It might be gone.
Right.
And yeah, so that's the.
I guess one hang up I have, and this is the first time I sat in on the budget committee and just look at what the other counties are doing, and it's kind of like, I just see that as out of proportion, because we're the same population as Winona, and they're only kicking in 110, so their difference is they don't have a trust fund, they don't have.
There's a lot of differences between,
differences.
yeah, it's not, we put 100,000 into the trust fund every year. That's what Goodhue County has chosen to do, did it several years ago. But we're also paying off debts on buildings
That's correct. You
That-
actually developed
that-
housing.
that the county partnered in years and years ago. The Winona doesn't have that. The 310,528 on there is 100,000 of the trust fund, and the rest of it is paying off debt on buildings that this county chose to get involved in years ago. The funding for actual operation, and it would be nice if we could just separate that out individually, isn't significantly a lot of difference between the counties, other than there's dollars to run the housing trust fund and there's dollars because we have these loans and so there is extra administrative expenses here. The interesting thing is Goodhue County, Dodge County, Winona County, and Wabash County, in the Section 8 program that SEMMCHRA runs, $0 from our levy go to operate that fund. The Section 8 is totally self-sufficient in SEMMCHRA. In Red Wing, that is not even close to the case. It costs significantly to run Section 8 in Red Wing. Winona gave us their Section 8 and we still operate it without levy dollars to operate it, whereas Winona as a city had the levy dollars to operate. Much more efficient when you do it multi-county.
So, because the counties have the opportunity to choose the components that they want to add on, there is a general fund levy overhead, and I can proudly say that that is equally paid across the board by all 4 counties, Dodge County included. I couldn't say that before. And to Commissioner Anderson's point, we no longer subsidize the Section 8 program. You used to pay for a portion, you do not anymore. And that is because we took on the additional vouchers through the city of Winona, and we can see the economies of scale.
When does that debt done, that 300,000 we're paying out in extra expenses, when's that debt done? Those other bills?
Well, that will be in it. That's a discussion for another day. It will go away when the bonds are done. Potential, I don't have those dates right offhand. The components of that are our housing projects that we developed. One thing I like about a housing trust fund is it gives you the opportunity, remember finance is my background, gives you the opportunity to finance some gap on the front end and not have that 300,000 haunt you forever and ever and ever and ever. From a financing perspective, I like that. As a taxpayer, I like that. So that's why I'm a proponent of the housing trust fund. It gives you the control, or your committee the control, to make the decision on what projects get funded and how it's financed. I don't want to quote a year, but I will follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Specifically on those.
Yes,
I
sorry.
don't know if you have more to present, but I do have just some general comments.
Okay.
Do you have more to present or?
Not on this item.
Okay, so our 2020 housing study said that we needed 2,208 units by 2030. I know that with the building permit waiver program, we've produced at least 500 of those units, but we, obviously still have, 1,700 more to go. So when she asks for this as $500,000 in levy, there are options where you could consider using fund balance or other funds. You wouldn't have to use all levy. And you could also make it contingent on, okay, Buffy, you go get a grant of that size. Yes, we'll match 500,000. Because she's right, this $1 billion, and actually it's over $1 billion, is going to be spent. It's just a matter of whether we want some of that to be spent in Goodhue County. So we do have a housing need, and I think the discussion should continue. But like I say, there are other ways that this could be funded, and you could also offer the same thing to the Red Wing HRA as well, that you'd match their grants up to a certain amount. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there is a housing need. I do think you probably at some point will want to discuss continuing the building permit waiver program as well, because it's been wildly successful, over 500 units in a little over a year and a half.
All right, Buffy, go ahead.
That is all I have on there. Can I move on to the next item on the ordinance?
I'm sorry.
Can I move on to the next item on the ordinance?
Yes.
I don't-
Any other questions on this? Right.
And you better be quick.
Okay. So in preparation of all this funding coming down, we started to look at what new programs are out there, what existing programs. In 2021, the state funded a housing trust fund, $1 million. The state didn't do anything with it. They put the money there. They never created a program. We were all anxiously awaiting, when are we going to get our match money? They've now funded $4.5 million they put in there. We are hearing that in 2023, we'll be able to apply for some of this match money. Again, don't know anything more than you can apply for this match money. Don't know if it'll be 1-to-1, it's flat across the board. I think that's why the state didn't develop the program in the past, because they didn't know how to allocate it fairly. So we'll see how, more to come on that, but 2023 is what we're looking at. So in preparation of that, I start going through files. Okay, we've got to have this, got to have that. Called Andrea and I said, Andrea, do we have the ordinance? I'm seeing in the minutes that we had that. Andrea looked, she could not find the ordinance that established the housing trust fund. I think it was a miss on SEMMCHRA's part that we didn't come back and ask for that ordinance to be set up. I do believe so that we are ready to file for that much money, we need to have that ordinance actually established and created. So our request today is to set a public hearing for August 15th at 9 a.m. To have a public hearing to set that ordinance in place. Copy of the ordinance is in there. The ordinance is verbatim, with the exception of ordinance being added to the top, the guidelines for the housing trust fund, which the county board did approve in 2018.
Got it. All right. So do we need,
So if you wanted to do this, you can't act now. You'd have to put it onto the board agenda and set that today. But you can do that if that's what you want to do.
so we have the trust fund. We don't have an ordinance that says we have a trust fund.
Correct.
Right. Well, I certainly think we need an ordinance for the trust fund that we currently have.
Would make sense, put it on the consent agenda.
We will do that.
All right.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank
Buffy.
you. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Happy to talk about SEMMCHRA programs, function, levy, anything. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much.